Hi everyone! Thanks so much for attending our virtual town hall on the Diridon Integrated Station concept. My name is Ryan McCauley. I work in the Government and Community Affairs team of Caltrain. Just to set a couple ground rules and logistics, the presentation will be given by Elizabeth Scanlon, the project manager, and Daniel Jongteen, the lead architect with Team ABC. We also have members of Caltrain, the City of San Jose, California High-Speed Rail Authority, and VTA all monitoring the chat window. So if you have any clarifying questions about the presentation, go ahead and enter them there and one of our team members will respond. Please note that chat comments will not count as official public comments. If you want to make a comment, please use our comment form on the project website diridonsj.org/disc. This information is linked in the video's description below. Just so you know, this video will archive itself on our YouTube channel, so if you were late or wanted to share this with anybody who couldn't tune in live, the link will be made available and shared out on all of our partners' social media channels. There's a lot of information on our website, so if you have additional questions or are looking for some more details, please visit diridonsj.org/disc. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Your feedback is incredibly important to us. Without further ado, here is Elizabeth and Daniel, who will talk about the Diridon Integrated Station Concept Plan.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm Elizabeth Scanlon. I'm the program manager working on behalf of 4 partner agencies. We're going to present to you the Integrated Station Concept Plan. This is a presentation that we have given about a week ago to the Joint Policy Advisory Board. And we're going to step you through our work over the past year, and we're excited to present a recommended concept plan layout. So, community interest in Diridon Station has been going for a long time. Started back with the Good Neighbor Committee recommendations in 2011, and it was codified in the Diridon Station Area Plan update in 2014, which is also continuing to be updated with the 2020 version that the City of San Jose is working on. Caltrain customers also are talking about it. Station users are talking about it, about how to think about the future for Diridon Station. These are some quotes from 2016 Caltrain customer surveys. We also know major land development is on the horizon with Google coming to the area. They have submitted their development application to build a new mixed-use development right near the station. So the partners are all working on different projects in this area. There's a lot intersecting in the Diridon Station area. So the purple circle here shows the current station historic depot. We know that Caltrain is electrifying. That project is under construction now. VTA is working hard to bring the BART to Silicon Valley Phase 2 project to downtown San Jose. The Diridon Station Area Plan Implementation Zone is shown in green. This includes the Google development, so there's a lot in terms of mixed-use development contemplated in the area. And finally, California High-Speed Rail plans to bring high-speed services to San Jose by 2030. And what we're working on is thinking about how the Diridon Station will evolve and change into the future. We have many advocates who have been thinking and working with the partner agencies on what the future could be for Diridon, including helping with lessons learned from different examples, thinking about different policy issues. And so SPUR in particular has been very engaged, and they were a major reason that Santa Clara County leadership was able to take a 2017 European station tour to look at how to integrate transit stations better with the urban development. So when we were on the tour, I was part of that tour. We visited Rotterdam Central Station, and what we started to realize is how you can have an iconic station with a big architecture, but also be organized with different modes and be very, very legible to passengers. So you can see to the right of the screen is the tramway, which we would call light rail. There's a connection into their metro station right in the front of the station. There's bike parking here. And if I were to turn around from that previous picture and look to the other direction, there's clear pedestrian pathways to downtown Rotterdam. So the legibility became very, very clear and transparent. This is also looking from the aerial view to downtown Rotterdam. And you can see a very strong sense of place where the station sits nested within the city. So the tracks and the station itself are oriented within into the urban form and very, very clear. We also visited stations in Amsterdam and got to see how the station itself can have connectivity both to development as well as different modes, and how important multimodal connectivity is, not just to the station from parts of the city, but also through the station in terms of bikes and peds and different modes, and how that space can really be done in a lively way, in an artistic way. So the 4 partner agencies, when we came back from the trip, decided to get together and enter into a cooperative agreement, or a formal sort of co-creation environment where they are working together to think about how to integrate Diridon Station, not only as a multimodal transit center, but how it relates to the city. And so it is a twin project of city building and transportation. They created a vision for the station. So we really want to deliver a world-class transportation hub that provides seamless customer experiences to move between the modes, but also to move between downtown San Jose and the neighborhoods to the west. So in the beginning of the planning process, we started with developing key objectives, right? So these are things that would be a touchstone throughout the planning process to help the partners measure different options or different ideas, including how well the station is multimodal and integrated and human-centered, really speaks to the passenger experience. We want the station to become a catalyst for the urban environment. We want it to support land uses and really inspire a good sense of place. We also want the station to be a destination or a place that people like to come to, that San Joseans can come and sort of hang out at. We want to create a compelling vision for the future, both in terms of something that we will be reaching for in the long term. This is a long-term project, and we want to understand why it's important to keep doing it. We want it to be future-proof, flexible, and adaptive. We know technologies will change, automated vehicles being one idea that could change things. We also wanted to make sure that the big moves or the rail corridor options are done in a way that preserve a 100-year investment. And in addition to that, we have to think about how the partners organize and govern themselves to continue to advance the program, to build it, and to ultimately operate and maintain it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept plan process to date. We had started this a little over a year ago, last fall. We started exploring with the partner agencies and our consultant team, Team Arcadis Bentham Crowell, objectives and ambitions. In the wintertime, we started looking at key elements like how does the tracks and platforms relate to the station center of gravity where the entrances might be. In the spring of this year, we started to develop possible layouts, different combinations of the different elements into an organized particular layout. Over the summertime, we worked on optimizing. And throughout that whole process, we talked to the community. We talked to them about the different themes that were important, about pros and cons, about priorities, and received feedback throughout, which has helped us develop the concept layout we're going to show today. So just a quick, what is a concept plan? What we've really been focused on in the last year is the fundamental functional elements as they relate to each other in the space. And this is an example from a Dutch project brought to us by Team ABC, but it demonstrates sort of the Lego blocks that become the organizational foundation for the station elements. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So first, we started with the big moves, and we looked at how does the northern rail alignment and the southern rail alignment work, coming into the station from San Francisco and leaving the station to go towards Gilroy. We then looked at the vertical platform position. Should they be up in the air slightly? Should they be at grade? And then we looked at different station locations, and should it be at San Fernando Street or Santa Clara Street? And we're going to show a little bit about that. So these kind of puzzle pieces or Lego blocks become a really important foundation as we start to explore how to insert the kit of parts or organize the kit of parts, the pedestrians and bikes related to the station entrances or station locations, how the BART station relates to the station entrances and transfer times for passengers between the heavy rail modes and the BART system, how the VTA light rail and how the VTA buses would be organized relative to the station entrances, the public spaces, and the commuter rail corridor. And finally, how taxis and TNCs and automobiles would access the space and where we might imagine parking could be located. So over the last year, we've presented 3 different types of layouts. These layouts represent sort of a spectrum of different combinations of the big move and the kit of parts. So we started with one that was at grade at West San Fernando Street, so the station center of gravity really oriented and anchored at San Fernando, and then we organized the elements accordingly. We had one that is elevated West Santa Clara Street. So the station platforms now have been raised slightly into the air, about 25 feet. The station center of gravity really oriented at Santa Clara Street. And in this particular case, we actually attached a northern and southern rail corridor that contemplates an I-280 viaduct. And then we had one that was elevated station with a West Dover Street orientation. So this elevated the station platforms, but oriented the center of gravity kind of in the middle between Santa Clara and San Fernando. And what we were trying to explore is the different ways that these elements would create a passenger experience and how the modal elements would function. Throughout the process, we did community outreach and quite a few events. We are showing here a picture from one of the station pop-ups. It was important to us to talk to the current users of Diridon Station. So we went right into the station and talked to the users. We also did several community events, including several community open houses. We did a significant Big Moves workshop in September. We've presented routinely at the Joint Policy Advisory Board. We presented throughout the year at the Station Area Advisory Group. So we've done a lot of different events to reach out to the community. We also attempted to reach out to those who find it easier to communicate with us online through a survey. And what we learned is the importance of well-timed, easy connections between modes. In particular, community really wants a short, direct, and very intuitive connection between BART and the commuter rail services. And you can see in the photograph on the screen that we actually asked the community to do an exercise to tell us what their priorities were. In terms of general community aspirations, we heard these several items over and over as we did community outreach. Improved transit serving the station, a highly visible and iconic station, so creating a place with activity centers near Santa Clara Street. Our community wants vibrant indoor and outdoor public spaces. They really want a street that's pedestrian and bike friendly while we're reducing car traffic. And we really want to make sure that there's a potential for future transit-oriented development around the station. So that sort of gets at and echoing what the partners had identified as the twin pillars in terms of transportation blending into city building. We heard that from the community as well. We had the community do different types of exercises as we were out at community meetings. This particular image shows an exercise we did where we asked community members to sit in the chair of the architect, to sit in Daniel's seat and draw for us what they aspire for the station. And this particular community member drew a raised station and showing how important the pedestrian connectivity to and through the station is. And Daniel's going to talk a little bit more about these themes. We also heard many, many ongoing questions. And I always say when I present that this part of the planning process will raise more questions than it answers. So we hear a lot about what effect the increase in train volumes would have on property impacts. And will it create safety issues at at-grade crossings? We hear a lot about will construction and activities increasing result in disruption to nearby neighborhoods? Will the expansion of Diridon Station lead to displacement? This is an extremely important topic of discussion, not only in San Jose, but in the Bay Area region in terms of community displacement. We also get asked quite frequently about how this project relates to the high-speed rail project. How will parking work in the area? What are we going to do at the historic depot? How are we relating to the Google project? And how will we have a direct airport connection? So again, lots of questions coming up. And as we advance the planning project process, we will attempt to start to unpack and answer these questions. So we're going to present now the recommended concept layout. I'm very pleased to show some three major decisions that the partner agencies are ready to put forth as a staff recommendation to the policy body. So anticipating City Council and the three transit agency boards would accept these recommendations. And we're going to step through each one of them. What I'm showing on the page is the concept layout. We're going to walk through what this means, Daniel and I, in terms of how the big moves, the heavy rail alignment and platforms relate to how we might imagine this space is organized relative to the kit of parts, which is what you're seeing pop in on the screen. So decision number one is to maintain the track approaches generally within the existing northern and southern rail corridors. So this is an overview of that recommendation and what it would look like. Generally coming in from the north on the Caltrain corridor, generally in the same right-of-way as today, moving through the station to the south towards Gilroy in roughly the same Caltrain right-of-way and Union Pacific right-of-way that exists now. When we started doing the technical analysis, we did get asked, over and over again to think about future-proofing the rail corridor. Rail corridors are 100-year investments, and we wanted to make sure that we were looking at the right investments for the future to ensure that we don't come back and have to rebuild things or underserve capacity. So we started by exploring to the north and to the south what that might look like. This image is based on conceptual design done by the team ABC. It contemplates non-electric diesel tracks, which we will need to continue to operate ACE and Capital Corridor and the Union Pacific trains, as well as new electrified track for Caltrain and for California High-Speed Rail. This image shows an outline of the parcels that directly abut the rail corridor, and what we're showing in the blue are the segments of parcels we think might be affected by the slight expansion of the existing rail right-of-way. We don't exactly know what these impacts might be. It could be that they affect a driveway, a sliver. We need to continue doing more design to fully understand those impacts, but this is what we think could happen in the north. And to the south, we explored two different options, what a 3-track alignment might look like, or what a 4-track alignment might look like. So the image on the screen shows, again, 1 diesel track for the legacy operators, or ACE and Capital Corridor and UP, and 2 tracks that are electrified for Caltrain and California High-Speed Rail. So what we see here are segments of parcels that might be affected. And again, we don't know the extent of the impact. We think it could affect driveways, the back of a neighborhood, or something more significant that we will continue to explore. And this is what the property effect might be if we thought about adding 4 tracks to this corridor. This would be very much for future-proofing for increasing services contemplated by ACE and Capital Corridor, as well as Caltrain and California High-Speed Rail. And we wanted to show what we think today, as part of the conceptual design, the relative differences could be in the property effects between a 3 and 4 track. So again, I'll just toggle so the audience can see what happens with 3 and the difference with 4. The project team, Team ABC, did quite a bit of work to investigate the I-280 viaduct also. So this is our Santa Clara layout, just as a refresh, that shows to the south of the station a corridor that would still be in the existing rail alignment and a new I-280 rail viaduct. So what we learned is that there are possible different ways to do this. What the screen shows is in blue, the California High-Speed Rail option. In green is the city explored some conceptual ideas to sort of try to optimize over the high-speed rail alignment. And in purple is what Team ABC came up with, is what we think is a viable and constructible I-280 pathway. What we were trying to balance here is the speeds needed for the trains to operate. Speeds can affect capacity of the trains moving through Diridon, with the curve radiuses being navigable by the trains. We did an extensive community workshop on September 23rd just on the big moves. What you see here is a community exploring around 3D models that we presented, the different options of the rail corridor and the big moves alignments, and how the rail corridors affect the station platform configurations and how that might relate to the station center of gravity. So we did pretty deep dive with technical information at this workshop. That material is on the diridonsj.org website, so folks can go back and take a look at the different benefits and trade-offs that we talked about with the community at that time. So what we're showing here is the Santa Clara layout. And what we did is quite a bit of work to explore the different ways that the electric trains would need to cross with the diesel trains to ensure that the electric trains are getting up onto a new viaduct in the right way, to align themselves to access that new guideway. And what we're showing is a northern flyover there. You can see the blue lines are sort of crossing the orange and red lines to allow for the high-speed trains to get onto the new viaduct that's going to the south. This is the best layout that has the least amount of community effect in terms of roadway impacts to the south. We also took a look at how a new viaduct might affect different neighborhoods. And so this image shows the different neighborhoods in San Jose that are currently experiencing the existing southern corridor. And the difference when we add a 280 alignment, what we found is that there are now new neighborhoods that weren't previously affected by this new guideway that would experience some level of effect, whether it's good or bad, because of the new 280 viaduct. We also showed the community an example of this. This is heavy infrastructure. This is a picture from a rail viaduct in France. So this is not an insignificant piece of infrastructure that would be built in the community. And we also tried to imagine what that might look like in existing neighborhoods. This is Illinois Avenue looking to the north near Gardner Elementary, and you can see the new guideway pops in the background. This is looking to the north again, Gardner Elementary, changing the visual landscape. And finally, looking to the northeast, this is what it may look like with a new I-280 guideway. One important consideration about the train pathways is to explore whether or not all of the trains could be eliminated from the existing corridor. We can't get the Union Pacific, the ACE and Capital Corridor off the existing alignment, so at least they would always remain on the existing corridor. What we did explore is whether or not we could get Caltrain and high-speed rail onto the new guideway. And what we found is in order to do that, we'd have to elevate Tamian Station, which creates a new impact to a neighborhood that's experiencing an at-grade station. So the difference is only high-speed rail accessing the I-280 guideway, or high-speed rail and some Caltrain. And what we found is it's very challenging to get all of the electric trains onto the new guideway and eliminate them from the existing corridor. We're also somewhat concerned about the Guadalupe River Trail. We realized that the new guideway would have to go in between the Highway 87 and the river. And so we tried to imagine what that could look like relative to the Guadalupe River Trail. So this is the trail looking south, and this is how we may imagine that the viaduct would look relative to the trail. We think this is going to be fairly challenging from an environmental perspective in terms of permitting and clearances, and certainly has a very different feel than the trail does today. We also wanted to look at what it would look like for, again, neighborhoods that don't currently have this level of infrastructure would have now a new significant and different piece of infrastructure in the neighborhood. So to summarize the benefits and trade-offs of the existing rail alignment versus an addition of an I-280 rail viaduct, this table shows that train volumes are increasing overall in the future. And we're showing here the imagining of what could happen in 2040. But what we find is, unfortunately, the I-280 guideway doesn't solve as many problems as we had hoped. It, in fact, increases the effects to the total number of neighborhoods. It has a significant infrastructure footprint. Now we have noise and vibration effects expected to increase not only in the existing neighborhood, but also in new neighborhoods, as well as the visual effect. And ultimately, environmental and maintenance become modest and high impacts. So the partner agencies really studied the I-280 corridor, and as they advanced this recommendation to largely stay within the existing rail alignments, the partner agencies are committed to making the environment no worse than it is today, and hopefully better through a series of enhancements and tangible mitigation measures. What we can imagine exploring, and the partner agencies will continue to explore, are different ways to block sound and visibility related to the rail corridor. And what we're showing here are some options for different types of barrier walls. These can either block visually or can block sound, or both. You can imagine that the wall can be built in a way that allows for vegetation to grow on it to increase its overall look and feel. We also know that there are engineering things that can be done in terms of how to improve the track bed itself to help reduce the sound from the rail as well as the vibration. And these are very technical engineering things that help a modern railway mitigate some of those effects. One area that we know is very much a concern in the community is the effect to Fuller Park. And so our project team and the partner agencies have contemplated a couple of different ideas of how we might imagine Fuller Park could evolve over time. So one park idea is to add vegetation. You can see in the background, the rail corridor is largely blocked by now a green screen. We could do a fence that has vegetation growing over it. So there would be a safety barrier here, but with vegetation growing up the fence to improve its look and feel relative to the park. And the final idea would simply to be a barrier wall. The other options, looking from the other way, just to give a sense, again, adding a green structure, a green wall, adding a fence that would enable vegetation to grow on it, a little bit more soft improvement, if you will, in terms of its visual nature, and finally, how it could look if there was a wall. And then we know, and we hope to embark on a community design process to fully imagine with the community members what the park might evolve and look like over time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel to walk us through decision number 2 and 3 on this concept plan.
Thank you, Liz. I'll try to explain what the next 2 decisions are relative to the concept layout for the Diridon intermodal station. And the first decision has to do with vertical profile of the station, and that is elevating the station, or elevating the tracks, that is. And the reason for that is that one of the objectives that Liz was just speaking about is improving the urban connections and improving not just the transit piece, but the city of San José. And what that also entails is creating better north-south connections along the track corridor, and also, very importantly, much better east-west connections across the tracks. Because currently, as you know, I'm sure, the track is a barrier in the city that is hard to get across. And that is because on pretty much all of the streets that cross the tracks, from Julian up north, the Alameda, Santa Clara, San Fernando Park, and also San Carlos, you either have to come down under the tracks or go across, go above. And that is a bit, that is so for cars, but that is much more of a concern to bikes and pedestrians in the current situation. So what we're looking to accomplish is to see if all of these streets could be on the ground plane, so that they would simply continue and be through streets and allow for much better connections across the tracks in the east-west direction. So I have a few examples of that, and these are just to give you an indication of what that could look like and what some of the design thinking is. This is an example from the North Station in Amsterdam. And what you see is that there's an elevated structure over here, and that allows for the streets to be on the ground plane. And what could also be a design idea is to have, what you see on the left is to have activity over there. You can't really see, this is during construction, but you could imagine that there's lively things going on, that there are shops, retail on those, the same level, so that the underpasses would feel safe. And another means to accomplish that goal is to have daylight openings in that structure, and that's what you see happening in the top of this image. Another reference that we brought over here is another viaduct in Rotterdam, and this might be less tracks, so it's not completely comparable, but what you can see is that structures can actually be very pretty and don't have to be a problem for the streetscape. And also, very importantly, is that the ambition of being able to see through, so that they don't block the continuity of the streets and that you see where you're going, is something that could very well be accomplished by elevating the tracks. Also, elevating the tracks would allow for having room under the tracks and putting services, function, commercial facilities, restaurants, and what have you under that deck. And that would allow for activating the streets and creating for a more lively and vibrant city. And this is an example from Berlin, where that's done very successfully, as you can see. And similar things have been done in the Netherlands as well. This is an example from Rotterdam, where you see activated streetscape that is made possible by using that space under the deck. So, the next decision is how the station would operate and how it would work. And that would mean that we're putting forward a proposal that has 2 concourses. One is oriented to the north by Santa Clara Street, and the other is more to the south by San Fernando Street. And I'll explain you how that works and why that is. So you know that in the station area, both Santa Clara Street, which is on the top of this image in the north by the SAP, as well as San Fernando Street, more to the south, are very crucial streets for the city of San Jose currently. And we would propose to make sure that we use the qualities of those streets also in this concept plan. And that means that the focal point of the station should be, we believe, between the current tracks, between the creek, between Santa Clara and San Fernando Street. So this box is where the main focus is of the new urban development, as well as of the most important pieces of the transit modes. So this is an architectural drawing, an architectural impression, a very conceptual preliminary impression of how that could work. So what you're seeing is the elevated guideway with 5 platforms and all of the tracks on it. And what you're also seeing is by Santa Clara Street, a concourse that would provide access to the station, a northern concourse. And this is a conceptual drawing. We don't know how that's going to look exactly, but we imagine that a northern entrance might be very useful because of the qualities that Santa Clara Street has and because of the amount of people that use Santa Clara Street today. Then to the left of the image, you see an additional concourse that is close to San Fernando Street. And that additional concourse would provide access to the platforms for people coming from downtown on San Fernando Street, as well as people that need to be or come from this new urban development that we're going to find south of San Fernando Street. Now, the idea of this project is that this is not just about trains, but what we're trying to accomplish is to make this facility and this new piece of city as attractive as possible for bicyclists as well as for pedestrians. So all of these ideas are focused at creating very easy access and attractive places for bikes and pads. Obviously, it's not just about trains. All of the other modes of transportations are around this multimodal hub. And the ambition is to make transfer between the modes as convenient, as compact as possible, and also as intuitive as possible. So what you see over here is the position of the new BART station. The new BART stop, which serves the SCP, serves the new Diridon Station, and serves this new urban development. And that is right in front of that new Santa Clara concourse. Also, we have the VTA light rail and the VTA bus stops that are integrated into the urban structure. And you see that the bus stop could be a very compact dynamic bus stop. And the advantage of that is that it would take up very limited space and at the same time would have a big capacity. And it would be visible right from the front of that station, right from that Santa Clara concourse. The light rail could be an underground stop, and that is because the light rail is somewhat harder to cross as a pedestrian. By having it underground, it could be very close to the station. You could reach it very easily from the San Fernando concourse in particular, and it could cross all of the bike flows as well as the heavy rail tracks in a safe manner. And we could imagine having the intercity buses, the long range buses, somewhere on the western side of the station, that is on White Street, on the new series of stops that aren't there yet currently. And we'll also have automobiles, private automobiles, TNCs and taxi, of course. Coming in from the south, we could imagine creating new curbs on Cahill Street, close to the station, and in a way that is safe and doesn't intersect with the flow of pedestrians and bicycles. So those are the main pieces, the main modes of transit that make up the station. Now, to give you an idea of how that would functionally work and how you could experience that station in the future, we have a few preliminary artist renderings that give you some idea of how that experience could be. And that begins with the current situation of Santa Clara Street. You all know this. This is walking towards the track corridor with the SAP Center on the right-hand side of the image. And this is how that looks today. Now, imagine if we were to raise the tracks up, Santa Clara Street would simply continue, and you wouldn't have to dip down under the tracks, but you could just continue on your bike on foot to the west of the city. Now, to the left of the image, what you see is potentially how you would find that station. And we're not saying that the station is going to look like this way. This is just where we think the different pieces would go. And the aesthetic quality, the appearance of the station is something that we'll get into later. It might not be a box, it might look totally different. But we assume and we propose for now that the station entrance will be just off of Santa Clara Street. Why that is because it will be very easy to find, and you would have an intuitive way finding from Santa Clara Street to the station entrance. You really couldn't go wrong. That's the ambition. So if you were to look left then from where we just were, this is standing in front of the SCP, looking towards the current station. You see the current bus station on the right, and this is how that looks today. We could imagine that in the future, we would find that station entrance that I was just talking about on the right-hand side, very visible and easy to get to. And on the left, on what is open space in the middle, on the left we would find the future BART entrance to the underground BART station. So the space that we see here is space that we assume will need for buffering and for safety and for allowing that all of the people that come out of an SAP event would be able to transition from the SAP into BART or into the station. And also the transfer between BART and the station on the right-hand side we hope would be as intuitive as easy as possible, because coming from BART you would see the station and could walk over there in a matter of seconds or a few minutes at the most, and vice versa, coming from the station you would get to BART really easily. Now in the center of the picture, at the far end, you see that second San Fernando entrance that we're going to talk about in a moment. So looking towards the tracks, currently this is how that looks today. And in the future, that might be the entrance to the station. And again, we don't know how the experience would look like, how the design would look like, but the objective would be to make that as intuitive as possible. Having entrance space in the beginning, where you would also buy your ticket, find travel information that you see on the left of this image, and then intuitively move into the concourse that is right ahead of you. And you could possibly even see the trains that are on the deck, so that you would understand automatically where the trains are and how to get to the platform that you would need. The current concourse that leads you to the platforms of the station today looks like so. It is not going to be large enough to carry the future passengers, and also the experience could be better, we believe. And what we hope to accomplish is to have a concourse that includes services, shops where you could pick up a newspaper, get a cup of coffee, a concourse that is wider to be able to handle all of the future passengers, and would also have daylight that comes from above, so that it's a much better experience. And what you're seeing here is escalators and stairs that lead to the different platforms. And you really couldn't go wrong because you could see up there and see what the way to the platforms is. The experience on the platform is currently today like this. And what we're trying to accomplish on the level of the platforms is to have platforms which are much wider and therefore safer and have more capacity. We'll have an increased number of tracks. And we could talk about in the future either having a shed on the platforms to protect you from sun or even rain and have some shade. These are all options that we'll be studying. But the objective for the platforms would be to have a great experience which is designed for people, which is designed with the user in mind, and which is a facility primarily for people where the trains come in to serve people and not the inverse. And you would also have a view out into the city so that you would automatically know where the city is and how to get from the station into the new urban core and the existing downtown. To the west of the tracks, facing downtown, Whole Foods is to the left over here. Currently, this is how that looks. And you see the underpass on Santa Clara Street we were talking about earlier, which dips down and which has very narrow sidewalks for pedestrians today. What we're hoping to accomplish is by raising the trains that we could have, again, the streets on the ground plane so that the city would simply continue. You would have the trains overhead, of course, but we could make daylights opening so that that underpass becomes pleasant, and that underpass on the street will be right next to the concourse, so there's liveliness on pretty much all hours of the day. Also, to the right of the image, you see an additional entrance to the station, and that entrance is going to serve a lot of people that live to the west of the tracks currently. We think it's important that they don't have to come around and come in through the eastern entrance, but have an entrance that serves them directly, so they have a very short route from their homes into the station. And this is San Fernando Street, or that is the western part of the station. And we are looking towards the current light rail stop. And currently that light rail stop and the tracks are blocking any through movement across the tracks because the tracks are on the ground plane. Now, imagine in the future, what we could do if we raise up those tracks is create a connection for bikes and pedestrians especially across the tracks. And San Fernando Street is currently turning into an important connector for bikes, even more so in the future we expect. And therefore it could be very useful to enhance that quality and extend San Fernando Street all the way from the west side of the tracks towards downtown. And again, you would see to the left of the image that southern station concourse that would either be on San Fernando or just off of San Fernando Street, that would provide a southern access to the station, also from this side. And to the right side of the image, you see the suggestion of a bike storage that could be very close to this bike lane, so that you would easily get to the station by bike, park your bike in that storage, and then find yourself to the platform very quickly and smoothly. So those are the main pieces that multimodal hub has, and the important elements are again the elevated deck of the trains, having all of the modes they're compactly and conveniently integrated into the city and very close by the station entrances, and having urban connections on Santa Clara and San Fernando Street that are a great improvement on the current condition. So, and then I'll hand it back to Liz.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. So just a recap or a summary of the outreach events that we expect to complete as we move through the process. And I'll highlight, today we're doing the online town hall. And what will happen next is the 4 partner agencies will go to their policy boards. You can see that San Jose City Council on December 3rd, Caltrain and VTA on the 5th, and California High Speed Rail on December 10th. The partners at the staff level are asking those policy bodies to accept the concept plan layout, or the concept layout, and the 3 main decisions that we've put forth. If they accept those, then we conceive that we would move into the next steps of the planning process, which include continuing the planning and conceptual design work over the next year. We would be exploring what Daniel presented in terms of the modal elements and how they interface with the urban landscape. We would continue to explore those. We think that we have a lot of collaboration to do yet with the City of San Jose and the DSAP process, as well as with the Google project. We would continue to explore the conceptual design of the track alignments and rail operations. We need to study the best options to organize and govern the future station. So there's some policy planning work to be done in the next year. We want to start to think about how to build a viable financial plan for this program, and ultimately develop a roadmap to implement the project, including what strategies we might employ with environmental clearance. And throughout the next year, we will continue with the ongoing stakeholder and community engagement. So this is just the beginning. There's quite a lot to do. And what we presented is the big moves in the kit parts and how we might imagine those kit parts interface with the big decisions in terms of the rail corridor and the platforms and the station entrances. And we're excited to hopefully have the policy bodies favorably accept those decisions and move the program forward. So with that, I think we'll turn it back over. Thank you for your attention, and we look forward to continued engagement and community question and answers.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Daniel. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. Again, we really appreciate your participation and dedication to this project. We all here are really excited about the potential for this station and to hear all of your feedback on the proposed concept. Again, if you want to submit an official comment, please fill out our online comment form available at diridonsj.org/disc. All of this information is available in the video description below. We'll go ahead and stick around for another 15 minutes to answer any questions, so if you have any, please go ahead and put them into the chat window and one of our team members will do their best to answer it. Again, thank you so much for joining us and have a great day.